Welcome. And if I didn't say it enough, welcome to the Remember When podcast, which is powered by Taguava Coffee. Taguava is a great coffee company by some guys in Detroit. It's a farm to cup model behind there. It's made directly on the farms in Guatemala. And the really cool thing about Taguava Coffee is a percentage of the sales that you as the consumer purchase goes back to those villages for clean water filters. Water is something we all take for granted, but Taguava's reaching out to those communities and helping them out with that. So the Remember One podcast brought to you by Taguava Coffee. I am your host, J.U. Kalkrick, and as always, alongside me is Deb, the professor, our legal analyst. How's it going, Deb?
It's going well. It's been an interesting week.
To say the least. Very interesting week. Let's just go. Let's jump into it. We have a big guest joining us today, Jemele Hill. Really excited about this. She took the time to join. She's going to be joining in about 5-10 minutes. We're going to dive into her career, how she got started, and where she is today.
I'm really, really excited to talk to Jemele.
So, as we do every show, we pick a year because this is the Remember One podcast. And what we like to do is we like to reminisce on the Remember One podcast. Today's year that we chose is 2006, because the reason we chose 2006 is because that's when our guest, Jemele, got her start at ESPN. So we snake back and forth. We give each of us, I give 5 fun facts about the year 2006. Deb gives 5 fun facts about it, and we just go from there. I will start in 2006. Britney Spears and Kevin Federline got together. What's the year of Kevin Federline and Britney Spears?
Wow. Okay. I got one for you. Twitter was launched in 2000.
You took mine.
I'm sorry. That's the point. We always have to have like 10 or 20 of them because we take each other's.
Right. Okay. Yes. Twitter. Do you know what the very first tweet was?
No, I should, but I don't. What was it?
It was just setting up my Twitter. That was the very first tweet. All right. Also, sticking with that technology side of things, Google purchased YouTube in 2006 for $1.6 billion in stock.
Wow, you got mine.
And now we're even.
Okay. 2006 was the last year they made the Ford Taurus. The last Ford Taurus rolled off the assembly line in Atlanta, Georgia, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, that was an iconic car.
Are you a Coldplay fan?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, in 2006, Coldplay's Speed of Sound became the 1 billionth song sold on iTunes.
Okay.
I'm not a big Coldplay fan, but.
How many are we at here? I'm going to go with sports then. Barry Bonds hit 715 home runs. That's when he hit his 715th home run, which was more than Babe Ruth had hit.
Barry Bonds, great. I'm a big fan of Barry Bonds. I think he definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame. But
that's such an interesting question, isn't it? With the steroids and that.
Right. Exactly.
And people go back and forth on that, but he's a phenomenal player. He always has been a phenomenal player.
He definitely. I lived in San Francisco for a little bit. I, had the opportunity to, meet him at some Giants games when I was there, when I was playing for the 49ers. He was a nice guy to me. I don't know how he is to other people, but I was excited, for his career, and I think he's someone that should definitely be in the Pro Baseball Hall of Fame. But moving along on our list, since we see a lot of this guy on TV because his trial, but the biggest movie in the year 2006 was Pirates of the Caribbean. Dead Man's Chest was the biggest movie.
Oh yeah, that's. Gosh, should I ask whose side you're on, Amber or Johnny?
I'm Team Johnny.
Team Johnny, yeah. What? Oh, geez, there are so many things going on with that. I'm sure Jemele has some thoughts on that one too.
Definitely.
Okay, so my last fun fact is that my very good friend, J.U. Kalkrick, led the MSU football team in rushing touchdowns in 2006.
Ooh, I think I know that guy.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I had a better 2007 season under Coach Antonio.
You did, but you picked 2006.
That is true. All right. So, hey, we moved along with that because I want to save time. I want to get, our guests on and go from there. So today our guest is joining us is Jemele Hill, who was born in Detroit, went to Mumford High School, and then she decided to make one of the best decisions of her lives. She chose Michigan State University to attend, where she studied journalism, and she's a journalist who writes for The Atlantic. She worked for 12 years for ESPN, and today she is a member of the Remember When show. As they say in Detroit, Jemele, what up, though?
I'm glad you were able to pick up on I like to think of worldwide lingo. For people who don't know, what up, though, is the official Detroit greeting. If you meet somebody from Detroit, if they don't say what up, though, they're not real. They're not really from Detroit. They must be from a surrounding area. Interesting, you guys picked 2006. See, I thought you would have picked because after I went to Michigan State, as you know, Jehu, I covered Michigan State as a beat reporter. That's why I met you.
Yeah.
So I covered Michigan State as a reporter from 1999 to 2005. So I think you got there around 2002 or 2003.
2003, yeah.
2003, right. So I was like, I thought you would have picked 2003. That was the year you showed up at Michigan State's campus.
And lived years of good times at Michigan State campus.
Hey, you better let them know. One of the best overall schools, academically as well as socially in the country.
Exactly. Similar. You said that worldwide. If someone, you said what up though to someone. It's similar for Michigan State. If you say go green, and and they don't say go white, something's off.
You do. And it's funny because the good thing about going to Michigan State is that if you see somebody who has Michigan State apparel, 99.9% of the time they actually went to the school, unlike our rivals where they probably go there. Okay. So if you do say go green when you see somebody wearing some Spartan gear, you know that you're going to get a go white back.
Yeah. And my colleague here, co-host Deb, she's actually a sports law professor at Michigan State. And also a sports and inequality professor at Michigan State and also at Wayne State. So that's what her jumping on here. We have bombard you with a series of questions and just have a great conversation. One of the big things I want to get into because I said this podcast, the Remember When podcast, is a show about reminiscing. A lot of people see the finished product in someone now. I want to take a deep dive, talk about your starts, your beginning, even back from Mumford High School. How did you choose Michigan State? Like, why did you choose to go to Michigan State? And was journalism something that you always wanted to do?
Well, I hate to admit this, but I have to be transparent. Michigan State was not my first choice. I guess to go back a little bit, in high school is when I decided for sure that I wanted to pursue sports journalism in particular. I wrote for my high school newspaper. I actually started working for the Free Press when I was in high school, answering phones in the sports department. Also did an apprenticeship program there. So by the time I got to Michigan State, I was pretty knee deep in journalism. The other schools I considered were Michigan and FAMU. But Michigan got actually eliminated pretty quickly because the word had gotten out, or I think they had made an announcement that they were ending their journalism program and they were just going to have all the journalism majors become English majors. And I was just aghast at that. Like, oh no. I mean, even though I know now, and I tell those who want to study journalism, you don't have to major in journalism to be a journalist. In fact, I probably would say that you probably be better off not majoring in journalism, but majoring in like history or something else, like that. But at any rate, at the time, I knew I had to major in journalism. And what was also widely known, as I found out working at the Free Press in high school, was that Michigan State had one of the best journalism programs in the country. And they also had a college newspaper, the State News, that you both are familiar with. That was the largest college daily in the country. And they had won a number of awards for best college newspaper. So when I did, look at Michigan State seriously, I chose the school for the journalism. I didn't choose it for anything else. I chose it for academic reasons. FAMU didn't work out because my mother wouldn't let me go to Florida. It was like, because I did want to, I really seriously considered an HBCU. FAMU was at the top of my list. Probably second to that was probably Clark Atlanta. But, Michigan State wound up being the perfect choice because it was just far enough from Detroit where my family lived. So they had to call if they wanted to come see me. They couldn't just pop up. And, Ann Arbor's a little closer. You might not have to call with Ann Arbor because it's only about 35, 40 minutes from Detroit. And also the reputation of the journalism school and the State News is what sold me. So I've been very, very fortunate. I've been very blessed. Most people do not know what they want to do. It takes them a while to figure it out. Sometimes people change their minds about what they want to do with their lives 3 or 4 times. And I was the very fortunate person. Yes, I was the fortunate person that realized in 10th grade what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And it's the only thing I've ever done.
How did you get into like an internship program as a high school student?
So
I'm sure we have some high school students and some kids who really want to hear that. Like, how'd you do it?
Writing for my high school newspaper was the first step. And the one thing that was very different about Detroit compared to maybe other cities is that the newspaper was heavily involved in high school journalism. And the way it worked in Detroit was that the Free Press actually produced all the high school newspapers. So once a month, they had a special insert in the paper that had all the high school, just one page per high school, in one, kind of bulky tablet that had all the high school newspapers in it. So that meant as a high school student, you had to actually go to the Free Press to put together the paper. So you got exposed to a professional newsroom, but that was the point, is that they were trying to encourage young people to pursue journalism as a career, as an additional kind of example of their commitment to this. They created an apprenticeship program for Detroit area high school students where, you had to write an essay and apply. And if you were selected for, I believe, 10 weeks, you did 20 hours a week at the Free Press in the summer, and you learned about how to write stories, how to interview people. You learned about the newspaper business. And so I got accepted into this program because my high school journalism advisor made me apply to it. And, I think every person, especially, you get to, you become an adult and good and grown, but we can all point to teachers, to faculty members, to professors that just by planting a seed, they put us on a different course. And so my high school advisor, little did she know that by telling me about this program, it would change my life. And learning about journalism, being assigned 2 mentors that were women, one of which was a sports writer, really gave me that confidence early on and that sense of belonging, even though obviously sports media, sports journalism, writing in newspapers, broadcasting, it's a very male dominated profession. And I was very lucky because of the confidence that was instilled in me early. I never thought that sports journalism was something I shouldn't be doing. I never thought of it as a place that I didn't belong, because I was able to get that early confidence and early belief from some, older experienced journalists.
That's huge.
Yeah. So when you say the fact about the journalism's part being heavily male dominated, you see it even on TV, these days and everything like that. Like, why do you think it is? Like, is it just something that the big reason is because it's always been that way and it's that good old boys club? Or, like, what is it, and what can, young women, that were in your position, your situation, want to get to where you are, what steps can they take to get, kick that, glass door down?
Well, it's a multi-pronged reasons. Exposure is a big part. Like, I got exposed to it, and so that piqued my interest. I mean, I also was a big sports fan growing up, and I was the neighborhood tomboy, so I played sports as well. And a natural extension of that was reading about my favorite sports teams, because then, we ain't had an internet, so we had to actually read the newspaper to follow our sports teams. And so that got my interest piqued about writing. I was already a voracious reader. And so once I figured out I could put two and two together, my love of sports, my love of reading and writing, it kind of all made sense. But a lot of young people, and especially young people who live in inner cities like Detroit, are not even told or know that sports journalism and sports media is something that would pursue. I would say this extends to both men and women, especially those of color. Is that, I think for most young Black men, they just think about playing sports. They don't think about that you can be a sports broadcaster, you can be a sports journalist, you can still stay close to sports that you love by covering them. That's just another kind of extension of it. So the exposure part is one thing. The other part is that historically, this is not, sports has just not been a place where they've made room for us. People like to act like that what you know about sports is directly related to the genitalia you have, and that is not true at all. And so as I got deeper into the profession, I saw that there was an exposure problem. There was an awareness problem in terms of sports media being aware that this is something that women could do. And also, it's sports journalism is hard on women, very hard. I mean, I think I learned a lot once I made the transition into television about how hard on women it could be. Women are not allowed to grow old gracefully on television, and so there's so much fixation with what women look like that are delivering sports news and talking about sports, and over fixation, in fact, both by those who make the decisions and frankly by the public as well. Because when a woman is on TV, the first thing people want to talk about is what she looks like. So because of that, and other young women who maybe think about sports see that happening and it discourages them. This is also a profession that's very transient. I mean, I live in Los Angeles now. This is the sixth city I've lived in since I graduated from Michigan State. Even when I had a bunch of internships while I was in college, I mean, I lived in a different city every summer. So for women who might want to get married or have a family, this is not to say that there are not married women who are sports writers, but it is a bit of a challenge because you move around and then you travel, as you know, Jayu, when covering Michigan State, it's like, if you're covering Michigan State, your schedule is their schedule. So, right. So it's like you're covering, 12 football games a year. Half of those are on the road. You're covering the basketball team. That's 20 plus games a year. Half of them are on the road. You cover the NBA. That's 82 games a year. Half of them are on the road. So, you're spending a lot of time traveling. So that's not always conducive to establishing personal relationships. So there's a lot of factors, and the scrutiny and the criticism can be hard because especially being a Black woman in this business, and especially when I was on television. I mean, on any given day, you know how intense sports fans are. Like, if they don't like something that I've said, They're either telling me to go write for Cosmo or go back to Africa. It's one of the two, or both in the same sentence. And so that can be hard for a lot of female journalists to deal with, and very discouraging. So I just try to be as encouraging as I possibly can to them, and to let them know there is a place for them. I mean, listen, the profession looks a lot different than when I first became a sports writer, especially, and even when I first jumped into TV. I mean, I think there's been a lot more room made for women, but it is not great by any stretch of the imagination. There are flashes of progress, and there's also flashes. Well, I wouldn't say flashes. There are flashes of progress, but across the landscape, a lot of networks, a lot of decision makers just frankly need to do better.
Wow. There's so much there that you said. I mean, you know, it wasn't until 1978 that they really started letting women into the locker room. So there wasn't an even playing field there at all. You know, when I grew up, Jemele, I did a lot of the same things you did. I was, you know, I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to be that sports broadcaster. It wasn't a thing. You know, there were no women broadcasters at all. But one of the things that I think is really interesting, if you don't mind me jumping in here a second, Jay.
No, go ahead.
Title IX. Title IX is such a big piece of this, because I know it's educational. It's 37 whole words, and it just says that you're not going to be discriminated. I'm pre-Title IX. You two are both post-Title IX. But how do you feel? It's the 50th anniversary of Title IX. How do you feel that's impacting basically the answer you just gave us? You know, women in journalism, women in sports.
Title IX it's just been such it's one of the, you know, maybe 10 key pieces of legislation in American history. You know, 10 to 15, somewhere in that range. Because, you know, as you mentioned, it was an educational amendment. It was not really meant to. It was
nothing to do with sports.
Nothing to do with sports.
It does not say sports.
No, it doesn't. And it just, but yet it was used as a way to not only expose girls and women to sports, but also to get girls and women to participate more in sports. And so the levels of participation of girls in sports now is just astronomical compared to where it used to be. So you have a whole generation or generations now of women, since I'm, you know, post-Title IX, as you pointed out, barely, but I'm post-Title IX.
I have a whole Title IX story about myself, but that's it.
But you have generations of women who are not, who thankfully are not, who don't know what it's like to have access to sports blocked for them, and who now can look at professional leagues like the WNBA and the National Women's Soccer League and see women's sports in a whole new arena. As a byproduct of that, I think it's also creating a very fertile industry for sports media. You know, just using women's basketball as an example, I think something like 85 to 90% of women who play women's college basketball get their degrees. So you already have an experience. You have a woman who's played the game, who then has her degree. So perfect recipe for somebody who can maybe eventually become a sports writer. And so, or a sports journalist or sports broadcasters. And so I think you're seeing a lot more of that. And so hopefully, as these young women are considering careers, you just hope that sports media is one of them. But the impact of Title IX has been really tremendous. And, you know, as we assess just what's been gained in the last 50 years, this legislation has been in place. I think it's also, you know, important to, you know, note that there are still some areas where things fall short. I mean, there are still tremendous gaps between what's invested in women's programs versus what's invested in men's programs at the college level and even at the professional level. You know, realize, I always say this within the context of talking about the equity that needs to take place, is that it does girls and women a disservice when people do things like try to compare the WNBA to the NBA. The WNBA is 25 years old. I think maybe 26. All right, somewhere in there. Is the WNBA is not 30. Okay, right?
It's a baby.
It's a baby, right? Barely able to rent a car. That's what without a co-signing driver. The NBA is 75 years old. And I know there are a lot of people who are sports fans who don't remember what the NBA was like, but the NBA used to be on tape delay. People did not think this league was going to survive because there was a massive drug problem in the league. It was on tape delay, like I said, and it just was not considered to be a product that was viable to wider to wider audiences, to mainstream audiences, was not considered that. What changed the game was Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and also investment in the league. And even though the profits weren't always there, people kept investing in it because they knew that eventually this product would get to a point that we see now where it's $1 billion product. The same with the NFL. So I just ask that people apply the same grace to women's sports who were frankly not even legally allowed to exist or couldn't exist fully because of the various blockades in place that prevented it. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, the WNBA, to be as young as it is doing pretty well. And now I think in college sports that you have name, image, and likeness. They used to introduce. I assume this has been a topic on the show.
It's not the biggest thing in sports law right now.
Oh, yeah, understandably so.
I mean, because nobody knows what's happening.
They don't. Well, right. I'll put it like this. The things that we see happening are things that always have been happening. It's just that now.
Right. Yes.
That's the difference. But I think NIL has been a game changer for female athletes.
Yes.
They used to try to use female athletes as an excuse to continue to exploit college athletes. And everybody knew, especially with social media, that a lot of women would get an opportunity to make the kind of money they can never make. I was just reading about a gymnast. I forgot what school she's at. She got paid $1.5 million last year. Okay. Because
it is an equalizer.
It's an equalizer.
I view it as an equalizer.
I agree. I mean, it is allowed because on Instagram, it's the female athletes that have the most followers. It's not guys. Okay. And so because of that, it's able to equalize things in a different way. And so you have, young women being able to make the kind of money that they may not even be able to make professionally, making it right now. And so I think that's going to be a very interesting and compelling step forward for women's sports as full equity is kind of the next conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I totally agree with that point there that you just made. It's NIL is something that's great for the game. It's something that gives the athletes some power, over these big institutions and everything. So with all that, I want to fast forward a little bit, jump into going into now you were doing a lot of print news, and then when was your big break that you was like, okay, I'm gonna be on TV? Like, hey, mama, we made it. when was that? Like, I know you did some spots on, the Levitard, and you were a guest on Around the Horn, and then Cold Pizza maybe, and Numbers Never Lie. So like, when was it when you first was like, okay, this is something. There's a lot of momentum going behind this television side of things.
So what people often forget is when I got to ESPN in 2006, your reminiscing year, they hired me to be a columnist for ESPN.com. They did not hire me to be on television. And because of some of the thought-provoking columns that I wrote, they asked me to be on TV to talk about either those opinions or to talk about other sports topics that were in the news. And so the very first show I did at ESPN was Cold Pizza. And it's funny because, like, I guess, me and Skip Bayless will always be linked, not just because of the many years I spent doing First Take and Cold Pizza, but the whole reason I got to ESPN was because he had left. He was writing columns for ESPN.com as well. He stopped writing columns to do television full time. So they had an opening. So that's the job that I got. I replaced him. And so, you know, at ESPN, the way it kind of works is, you know, you do a show, another producer from another show sees you, then they call you and say, hey, you want to do our show? And it's like, hey, you want to do our show? So I had not even been there for 6 months. And you know, they asked me to be a regular on Cold Pizza, which a month after I started doing it, they changed the name to First Take and moved it back to Bristol, Connecticut, to ESPN headquarters. Even at that time, I didn't really consider TV to be a big deal. Frankly, I never wanted to do television. And one of the more interesting changes in our profession is that now all journalists want to be on TV. When I was coming up, it was not that way. There was a very distinct line between being a print journalist and a broadcast journalist. In fact, we were like cats and dogs. Most print journalists look down on broadcast journalists because we're like, they're not the real journalists. We're the real journalists, you know, them and their little, you know, makeup and perfect hair. Like, we're the real journalists. We're in the trenches. So like, if you were in print, you did not want to be on TV because you thought it was shallow. And as I got more into broadcasting and started doing more shows, I saw what the difference was. They were making a whole lot more money. And I was like, wait a minute, I made this for doing that? Okay. So, I mean, what changed my life, and I talk about this all the time, is Matt Lauer had re-upped his contract with NBC, and they were paying him $25 million a year. And he had Fridays off. I was like, this is possible in television? Like, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And so after, you know, my first maybe 5 or 6 years there, I was like, you know, they're only going to pay a writer so much money. What they will pay a television person is endless. You don't know what that number is, right? We just saw it in the news. What Tom Brady
did. Tom Brady, yeah.
They're paying him $37.5 million a year. That's
more than he made playing football.
Correct. Like, his contract in full is going to be worth $375 million. That's more than his career earnings in the NFL. Charles Barkley has made way more money on television than he ever made as an NBA player. There's no question about it. So because that number is like monopoly money in TV, like, you know, it's possibility. The possibilities are endless. And so once I saw that, I said, you know what? I'm going to make the switch full time to television. And I started off on Numbers Never Lie, and they eventually changed the name of the show to His and Hers, and it was me and Michael Smith co-hosting. And
so before you jump into that, because I want to go into that, because you guys started that as just a podcast, right? The His and Hers.
Yeah.
And then your personalities really took over. And I'm telling you, I used to, that was religiously watching that show. I was away, I would DVR it, come back and watch it. Loved it. Loved the chemistry that you two had. It was like a brother-sister, you know, relationship there. It was, I absolutely loved that show. And even loved the fact that it wasn't like your typical sit down on today's news. You know, it wasn't that. It was like shooting from the hip, you know, really talking, giving, you know, facts, giving like a barbershop, you know, like a barbershop talk, you know, really loved it. And I think it was it 2015 when Michigan State beat Michigan, and you did in that monologue there, and you just went in on that was great.
Yeah, I mean, the really that show, and that was always our dream. We started that podcast. We started the His and Hers podcast because when, you know, Mike and I got to ESPN at different times, and but once I got there and had been there a little bit, we were both kind of going through similar career frustrations. The thing about ESPN is, like, great place to work, so many platforms that are available to you, but it's a constant fight for real estate. You know, there's a lot of really talented people in there, and it's hard. It's hard to get your own show. It's hard to get your own space in there. And we were both frustrated because we felt like, you know, we weren't really being seen at ESPN. And we used to have great conversations, and we wondered what those conversations might look like in a television show. Like, we can basically say the same thing, less cuss words, and just be on TV and have fun. And we tried to we did some some guest spots, like we filled in for Skip one time on First Take, and debated each other. And every time we were together, like, everybody raved about how much they loved us, but nobody really wanted to invest in giving us a television show. So we kind of got tired of asking, and we podcasts were just kind of really starting to become a bit of a thing. I mean, this is 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. I think it was like 2012 is when His and Hers, the podcast, debuted. And we just said, hey, give us a podcast. We think we can do this. So, we auditioned, we got it, and we just needed something. We needed proof of concept, but we were just doing it for us. We were like, we know we have something. If they're not on board now, they're just not on board. We're going to find a way. And the podcast became really popular. And a year later, because Jalen Rose left to do NBA Countdown full time, that left the opening on Numbers Never Lie. And so they knew that Mike and I had good chemistry. We were already doing a podcast. So they said, oh, this makes sense. Let's put her on the show. And so they did. And then the show, while, we made it what we could, it was originally conceived as a show where you would debate and then the numbers would prove who was right. But that wasn't really a concept built around us. Anybody could do that show, right? And we did something that was built around us. And, they saw that it made much more sense to title the show after us. So they changed it. And it's funny, the last weekend Numbers Never Lie was when we brought the show to Michigan State. And we brought the show to Michigan State when I was Grand Marshal of the Homecoming Parade. Yep. And that was our final show as Numbers Never Lie. That Monday we were His and Hers. And so our entire mentality with His and Hers, or anytime we did TV, is that Mike and I, we were going to be unapologetically ourselves. We were going to do TV our way, because what happens in the business is that people try to get you to do their version of TV. Like, they try to change your personality, or they're like, that's too much. Or, they just get in your head and they try to tell you what works. And you have to kind of block all that out and be you. And Mike and I our approach was that we were going to do it how we wanted to do it and live with the result, because what we would never be able to live with is doing what they thought we should be doing on TV and then it not working. We can't live with that. I can live with practically anything as long as I know I was able to be myself in doing it. And so we did some crazy stuff on His and Hers. I mean, sketches. We did. I look back at it, I'm like, I can't believe they let us do this. Like, this is
give us a story. Give us a story. Come on.
Well, I mean, everything started like when we did the Coming to America sketch, right? And they're showing one now, the Boys in the Hood sketch. We did one too. And I want everybody to know, with this Boys in the Hood sketch, that 40 was real. That's a real 40 ounce. That is not a prop. Okay, we sent our production assistants to the store to get me a 40. So I'm pretty sure I am the only ESPN person to ever drink a 40 on live television. I set that historical benchmark.
Breaking barriers.
I thought you were going to say to ever drink on television.
Oh, I'm sure I wasn't. I probably wasn't that one, but a 40, there's no way anybody drank a 40 on TV. And, this is what I always tell young people who, I know when you're younger and you're in your career and you're always trying to figure out how to be your full self in whatever professional capacity that you're in. And what happens is that you get a lot of people who, who doubt you, or don't believe or discredit you because of your experience or whatever. But you have to stay true to your instincts, because the reason these sketches even existed was our producers used to get so annoyed with us because we would make movie references during sports arguments. We would quote movie lines, right? Their frustration didn't stem from the fact that we were quoting movie lines. It was because we were quoting movie lines they didn't know. And I had to make a point to one of them that, it's really funny that you want us to stop quoting him because you're worried people don't get it. People don't say that about Chris Berman. Chris Berman will go on full on entire monologues about things, references from the 60s, the 70s that I do not get at all. And he's considered a legendary broadcaster. And there's nothing wrong with him making those references. But my thing is like, give me the same professional courtesy that you give Chris Berman or other people in this building who constantly make references on television that people don't know. So they left us alone for a little while. And then when it was Eddie Murphy's 50th birthday, we wanted to try to do an entire show of just Coming to America references. That's what we wanted to do, to celebrate Eddie Murphy. And one of our producers, not the one who, didn't like us making the references, he came up with the idea that we should try to do a sketch. And then as we started brainstorming, we came up with the idea of doing the barbershop scene. Mm-hmm. And that was our first one. And it took a lot of work. I mean, that was 6 hours. They rented out this barbershop, 6 hours. We rewrote the sketch so that it matched. It was playing off the fact that it was that weekend of May 5th was one of the greatest sports weekends of the year. I think it was the greatest sports weekend of the year because it was Manny Pacquiao finally fighting Floyd Mayweather. Right. It was a Kentucky Derby. It was a huge NBA playoff game. I think it was, OKC. They were in a game set with somebody. I'm blanking on who it was. So it was like all this stuff was going on. And we just asked different personalities from around the network to be in the sketch. And they did it for free. We did not pay them extra. Shout out to my man, Robert Flores right there. Robert Flores, former ESPN anchor, he spent 2 hours in makeup to look like the old Jewish man. And I was like, I could never buy Robert Flores enough drinks for sucking up his whole day for doing this.
All right.
Whatever. But the sketch was a massive success. People loved it. And I thought we were done. I was like, we can't do better than that. We crushed this sketch. We cannot do better than this. Then we got to think of some more. And you're like, we'll go hard too is, what if we did the Anchorman fight scene? They're like, what if we? I was like, do you think we could do this? And we just thought about it, and we're like, we can involve all the ESPN different shows, and we can make it seem like all these ESPN personalities are meeting in the parking lot to have a brawl, just like they did in Anchorman. Right? It's one of my favorite scenes, and this one we needed a budget, so we actually did need somebody to approve this. Okay, because we want to stay true. Because if you're gonna do this, you got to commit. Like Ferris Bueller said, you can never go too far, and so you have to be willing to go there. And we needed to get permission to have a horse and to light a man on fire, because that's what happens in the skit. That's exactly what we did. And listen, we didn't go anywhere as a show that year. We didn't travel anywhere because we blew all the money on the Anchorman fight scene. But it's one of the greatest things that anybody has ever put on ESPN's airwaves. And I will put that up against anything, to get Mike Greenberg and Mike Golick and all these different anchors outside the lines. We got them all involved and we pulled it off. And, that's the kind of television that you have to trust your instincts to do. Like if you had ever told a producer, like, I'm gonna have a sports debate show and we're going to do sketches from movies, they would look at you like you were insane, right? But we knew we could pull it off, and they were crazy enough to let us do it. And it was a time, and the only thing, and Mike and I talked about this so many times, especially after, we both had left SportsCenter, is it's true what they say is that you never realize when it's the greatest time of your life. And that those moments that we had on His and Hers, that entire time, where, as he used to joke, we were selling tapes out of the trunk, was like, that's the best television probably either one of us has ever done.
Mm-hmm. So
it's phenomenal.
Yeah, going into that. So then, obviously, you had some quote unquote controversial tweets and different things, and ESPN suspended you and everything. Was that like in the back of your head, like, okay, if it's not just me, it's also Mike too. Was that something that came up, and like, did that, fracture, fray, do anything to the relationship and everything?
So, a great question. Because actually very few people actually ask me that. And I've made it a point at various moments when I've been asked to, like, kind of talk about, there was a lot of collateral damage, but I'm never, super specific about it. And so, when I sent those tweets, of course, I had no idea that the reaction was going to be what it was. Because frankly, I didn't think I was saying anything that controversial. I was like, oh, I thought y'all all knew that. Okay.
Right.
Is all right. Okay. So I didn't realize it was controversial in the moment. And, but to unpack this a little bit, we were having problems on the show, not me and Mike, but, we had taken over SportsCenter. It was a really big deal for us in our careers. I mean, to get the 6 o'clock spot is special and noteworthy. And even though neither one of us had ever dreamed of being SportsCenter anchors, we realized this was a prestigious position to have in this industry. But there was a lot of fighting behind closed doors with management because all that stuff you saw us doing, his and hers, didn't quite fit on SportsCenter, and we wanted to make it fit.
Right.
And they weren't always down with that. And so we were frustrated a lot, and it took us a while to try to find our groove doing the show. And it was just so many different challenges and things that we were facing and that we were up against and that we were fighting. And all of this preceded Donald Trump, all of that. And so by the time Donald Trump happened, what it did is that it gave them a convenient excuse to do what they wanted to do anyway. We had a management change within SportsCenter that was pretty significant that happened a couple months before those tweets were sent. And when the management changed, it was with somebody or, people they wanted their old SportsCenter back. They did not want the personality branded SportsCenter we were trying to have. They didn't want the infusion of like creativity and they didn't want it. They wanted old SportsCenter. And we told them from the beginning, we don't want to do old SportsCenter. Okay. We want to do our version of what we think SportsCenter should be. Because again, our mentality is like, we're fine doing TV. We're going to do it our way though,
Right.
And so, as we were fighting those battles, that happens. And it frankly gives them the license to do something that they wanted to do anyway. They didn't, it's kind of like, and this will be an analogy you can relate to, JU, is like when they draft you and then they change coaches. They change coaches and suddenly you're like, oh, I mean, I kind of want to run, read option. They're like, nah, we just want to drop back passer. Right. So they wanted a drop back passer and we were not that. So yeah, as that became more apparent and the tweets gave them the license, as I said, to do some of the things that they wanted to do. And, not realizing what the reaction would be. It never put a strain on Mike and I's friendship because he made it clear from the beginning that he supported me. However, because I am his friend, it was hard for me not to feel guilty about watching him get hit by that collateral damage, because the fact that he suspended me, he didn't want to do the show without me. Right. And because one, he didn't want to look like he wasn't supporting me. And two, it put him in a really awkward position. So instead, I think he didn't do the show the first day of my suspension and then he did it after that. So anyway, I say all this to say is that we had a lot of conversations after that where I was like, Mike, are you sure? Because like, if I were you, I wouldn't blame you for like really hating me right now. So we kind of had this good thing going, or at least on the outside, this good thing going. And then suddenly it's just like, the Trump stuff started to be a cloud that our show couldn't get from up under because, we were being attacked left and right, though left and right from the right. Okay. We were under a lot of attacks on social media, a lot of what was written about the show, a lot of racial undertones of the things that people were saying. So, we were in the thick of it. And I was very unhappy. I didn't want to do SportsCenter anymore. But I was having those feelings before the Trump thing happened, honestly, because of all the creative fighting that was going on behind closed doors. So, and I knew that if I left SportsCenter, then they did not want to solo host at SportsCenter. So it wasn't like if I left, they were going to just let Mike host SportsCenter.
Right.
Even though he campaigned to do that. but they didn't want a solo host at SportsCenter. And I think it had less to do with that and the fact that they, once that new coaching regime came in, that new coach would never have picked Mike and I to be SportsCenter anchors ever. And so when I left, that gave him the excuse to also be like, okay, Mike, well, you're done here too. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, for a while, I mean, I told him this in the aftermath, as we had a couple heart-to-heart talks, is like, I felt terrible because I did for a time feel like I had derailed his career. And he was like, oh no, and he would not let me accept or take that blame at all. And he was just like, and I also, this wasn't on me necessarily, but I think ESPN did him a disservice because as all the stuff was kind of orbiting around me, they didn't check in with him to see how he was doing. They didn't even frankly care how he was doing, to be honest. And so I thought that was real terrible of them to do that because, Mike had been at ESPN longer than I had. I think he had done 15 there by that point. And I've been there 12 years because he had about 3 years on me. And I was like, man, this is how you treat somebody who has been basically a model employee for 15 years. This is crazy. So I think they let him down in a major way because even after I left, they just let him languish at ESPN. People were like, hey, where's Mike? How come we don't see him on TV? And I think he was really, and I can't fully speak for him because he can tell his own story, but just in the conversations that we had, Mike was really hurt by how they treated him once I left SportsCenter, and he had every right to be.
Right. Yeah. I mean, definitely, I figured, I just had to ask it because, like I said, at the beginning of that, you guys had such a, great chemistry, great that other sister relationship there. So I'm going to fast forward even further now. You leave ESPN, you're with Atlantic, then you and Carrie Champion, have your own show on Vices, and and also too, you can't hide the fact you're living your best life. You're hanging out with the Wades, Gabrielle Union, Dwayne Wade. You're sitting courtside here. You're at the Super Bowl in the suite. You got married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm gonna use a Michael Smith term. Or you got married to old boy.
Yeah, another fellow Spartan.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And you guys are taking trips and everything like that. Really happy for your success. I know it's been up and down career, but that's like everybody's career. It's up and down, and that's life. And I think you came back. You're on top. You're controlling your own narrative. It seems like from everything that I read, for you and everything like that. But I'm going to wrap up here, but I just have some questions. How Detroit is Jemele Hill? All right.
Oh boy, I'm real Detroit.
All right, let's see here.
All right, I'm ready for this. I love this stuff.
Let's go. Let's just go. Gus's Fried Chicken or Chicken Shack?
Okay, first of all, Gus's is not a Detroit staple.
Ooh.
Gus's is in Detroit. It is not like one of our places because Gus's, I believe, is a Chicago spot.
Well, I'm just throwing it out there.
Is it a Nashville? It is not a Detroit originated place. Is my point. Okay. But yes, I love Gus's. So yes, I would go Gus's.
All right, let's go. Lafayette or American?
What'd you say?
Lafayette or American Coney?
There's only one answer here. It's the Lafayette.
Good choice.
It's only Lafayette.
I'm neither. I'm not a Coney dog.
Oh, we'll fix you, Jay. We will fix you on that one.
Yeah. I like them both, but it's just really I have seen more shenanigans in American than I've ever seen. There is, in terms of atmosphere, there's like a Waffle House kind of vibe in American. Lafayette is where it's at. That's my spot.
Okay. I know this one of these is not, but I just got to throw it out there because I'm Canada Dry or Verner's.
Oh, you already know. Verner's. Verner's can cure practically any cold. Okay. It is used medicinally as well as just amazing over ice cream for a Verner's ice cream float. and just to drink in general. So, I mean, it's probably going to burn your esophagus, but that's not the point. It's very good.
All right. What's the best Faygo flavor?
Ooh, this is tough. My favorite growing up, and I'm gonna still stick with it, was peach Faygo. Peach Faygo was
peach. Oh, come on.
Yeah, I love Look, I know, you know what? I know what a lot of people say red or rock and rye. That's another popular. I do like the cola too. Now I had one recently. They have a special July 4th fireworks Faygo. And just imagine pouring an entire bag of sugar down your throat. That's pretty much what it is. But it's delicious though. But it's like a bomb pop. Okay.
Your favorite pizza spot?
Buddy's. Yep. Buddy's Pizza. Carrie and I recently went to Detroit for a visit. And so I had to expose her to Buddy's Pizza. And square pizza, nobody does square pizza like Detroit.
Okay, that is true.
Nobody does square pizza like us.
Old Tiger Stadium or Comerica Park?
Old Tiger Stadium. Look, Comerica is beautiful. I've seen many concerts there, many games there, but there's something about Old Tiger Stadium. I mean, that's the stadium I grew up going to as a kid. My mother used to take me to opening day. I was such a nerd, so that she had to lie to me and tell me that she lied to me and told me like that school kids get the day off on opening day because I would complain that I couldn't go to school. I was like, God, I was so lame. But yes, we would go to a game, every year. Bleacher seats $5. Y'all don't know about that life, right? And especially, man, you could get a seat even cheaper if you got an obstructive view seat, because there's like a big pole that's there that you got to kind of look around, but they discounted those seats like never before. So you haven't lived until you have sat in Old Tiger Stadium behind an obstructed view seat.
I remember those seats.
Yeah. That was where it was.
They were the best because they were so cheap.
They were so cheap. That's how you know you were really a fan. It's like,
yeah, and you can't go to a game that cheaply anymore at all. I mean, it's like $100 to take somebody to a game.
And that's probably on the cheaper end.
Yes. You get one hot dog. No beer.
All right, rank them. Rank these artists: Eminem, Big Sean, Royce da 5'9", and Trick Trick.
Oof. Okay. I mean, Eminem has to be one. Right. I mean, he's one of the best-selling hip-hop artists in the world. But realize there's a difference between a lot of people might agree Michael Jordan's the best basketball player ever, but there's a difference when you say your favorite. That's different. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I'd probably go, Eminem, Big Sean, Royce. I think T Grizzly deserves to be in this conversation.
That is true.
Yeah. Let's see, but I still go those three. And you said Trick Trick and who else?
Let me go back to my notes. It was Eminem, Big Sean, Royce, and Trick Trick. Okay.
Yeah. I probably put Trick Trick last. No sign of disrespect, but I think the others, just have how they put Detroit on. I mean, not that Trick Trick hasn't. I mean, he's a great artist, but Detroit has gotten put on in a different way because of them. But yeah, I would add T Grizzly in there because T Grizzly sounds so Detroit to me. Him and that's what I love the most about him and Big Sean is like they sound like Detroit.
Right, exactly. Yeah. What's your favorite venue to see a concert in Detroit?
Shane Park. I saw a lot of great concerts at Shane Park. Graduated from high school at Shane Park. But it's just like a intimate outdoor amphitheater. Had a blast there. Belle Isle's like right down the street, right off Jefferson, so it's right to me in the heart of the city.
Okay, and what are your thoughts on Detroit getting the draft in 2024?
Well, my husband is very excited. He is a long-suffering Lions fan. You see that little Lions little helmet? That's
I see that. Yeah.
Right. That's
I got one of those too. We all have to have our Lions helmet.
I did not grow up a Lions fan despite living in Detroit because they were just so terrible. It's like, I root for this team. They're so bad, like all the time. And I became a 49ers fan. So I've been rooting for the 49ers my whole life. That's why they got the big helmet over there.
Right.
But I think it's very exciting for the city. And, you know, one thing about Detroit, and people said this during the Super Bowl, I think a lot of people are really surprised, outsiders that is, about how fun and lively that Detroit is. I mean, the picture that's painted of Detroit, especially in the national media, is not accurate. I mean,
Right.
Yes, of course, like any big city, any big inner city, there struggles with crime and there struggles with a lot of the major problems that every big city has. But there's a vibrancy in Detroit that often gets missed. And so I think Detroit is going to put on a hell of a draft. So I'm very excited for the city. I think this is going to be a great moment. We put on a great Super Bowl. So I don't see why this would be any different. The crazy part is that, I don't know. I mean, the Lions look pretty decent on paper. And it would be better if they were like in line for a top pick and the draft was in Detroit. Like, that'd be even better. But I understand if Lions fans are like, please, for the love of God, we're tired of being in the top 5
Exactly.
So I understand that. But yeah, my husband's really excited about this.
Nice. And yeah, you mentioned, you know, like Belle Isle and all those different places. What was your favorite hangout spot as a kid? What did you?
Oh, it was definitely Belle Isle.
Yeah.
You know, kid through teenage years. I mean, there was, in the summer especially, there's just like a real magic in the city. And so we went to Belle Isle for picnics, family reunions. The Giant Slide was at Belle Isle, which if you haven't been on the Giant Slide, like, you ain't officially a Detroiter. You ain't got some burns from that slide, boy. And yeah, and even in high school, you know, it was we would always go down there to just like cruise around, blasting music, making out in Belle Isle. So yeah, Belle Isle is definitely my favorite hangout as a kid, for sure.
Okay. What's
that, or I would say a 1A would be the drive-in on Ford in Wyoming.
Okay.
Yeah, the drive-in. Okay. That was one of those two.
Nice. What's Ray asking? What's his Bolo?
Boblo or Cedar Point? Boblo boat.
The Boblo boat. Man, that is a Detroit memory. That boat ride.
Oh yeah.
That boat ride. The boat ride just basically turned into a huge party. And it's like the boat ride going to Boblo. But as fun as that was, it's Cedar Point. A lot of people who don't live in the Midwest have not heard of Cedar Point, even though for like 10 straight years, it was the #1 amusement park in the world, not just in America, but in the world, because they have the most roller coasters.
Most roller coasters and the highest roller coaster, I think. Wasn't and then they had that corkscrew, and
they had the corkscrew, the Magnum XL, I forgot
they have the mine ride.
The mine ride. They got the drag ride, which I think that was the highest one. So my husband's birthday last year, we went to Cedar Point, and it was great to be back there, but man, I do not have that same fearlessness I had as a young person. Like, I would get on everything, like, didn't matter. And I generally do love roller coasters, but it was just Sunrise. I was like, you know what? I don't know if I can do that anymore. I have the same constitution that I used to have, but we had a great time. So I love Cedar Point.
Okay. All right, Jemele. Well, once again, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I consider Spartans helping out Spartans. Again, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And again, I'm so happy for your success, so happy for where you're at in your life and everything like that. I just continue to, shine. But wrapping up here, the producer Ray saying, wrap it up. Once again, we want to thank you guys for listening. Go to tguava.com, use the promo code RememberWhen, and you'll get 10% off your order. And also, there's free shipping with Taguava coffee. Jemele, you're going to be getting some Taguava coffee.
Love it.
Are you a big coffee drinker?
Yeah, I have a coffee machine. Hopefully they do whole beans. Do they do whole beans?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you send me some whole bean coffee, because I have a built-in like coffee machine, like an espresso machine, but it only does whole beans.
Oh, yep. I'll send you some whole beans. coffee, and I'll just shoot you a message, and you can let me know where to send it, and then we'll go from there. But hey, thank you again. I'm your host, J.U. Colquitt, Deb, and producer Ray. Thank you for making us look good. We will see you guys next week on the Remember When podcast.